Hello friends, welcome to this special section of Physiology. In this section, we will try to deal with some of the multiple choice questions. Now you will be facing the multiple choice questions in your exam, and I am sure now you might have gone through the books and got the knowledge of the physiology. Now with this section, we will try to help you to how to solve the MCQs and what are the answers, how to get to the answers related to that. Let's go for the question number 1. What is the question number 1? Which among the following is an example of a negative feedback mechanism of homeostasis? Option A, the phase of depolarization of action potential. Option B, process of parturition. Option C, correction of blood pressure by baroreceptors. Option D, clot formation. And option E, defecation reflex. Now, what do you think? What is the correct answer? To get to the correct answer, you should have the knowledge for the negative feedback and the positive feedback mechanism. What happens in the negative feedback mechanism? The change is there in the opposite direction of the stimulus. And what happens in the positive feedback mechanism? The change is there in the same direction. Now let's look at the option A, the phase of depolarization of the action potential. What happens in that? Opening up some sodium channels will cause opening of more and more sodium channels. So the change is there in the same direction. So this is a positive feedback mechanism, not a negative feedback mechanism. Can you tell me about the process of parturition? What happens in process of parturition? Yes, recall here that oxytocin reflex. What will happen? Dilation of cervix, which will send impulses to the hypothalamus, more contraction of the uterus because of the oxytocin is released, and more dilation of the cervix. What you see? The change is there in the same direction. So again, it is a positive feedback mechanism. Even go for the option D now, the clot formation. What happens in the clot formation? Activation of some thrombin will cause more activation of thrombin or platelets. Some platelets get activated, they will cause more activation of platelets. So this again, that will be there in the same direction. When it comes to the defecation reflex, some fecal material is there in the rectum. It will cause the impulses to be sent to the sigmoid colon, and ultimately it will go to the transverse colon and the descending colon. Contraction of them, more fecal matter will come into the rectum and the defecation will start. So this is again, the change is occurring in the same direction. So this again is a positive feedback mechanism. What remains is this option C. If you have thought option C, then C is the correct answer. Correction of blood pressure by the baroreceptors. What happens in that then? If there is a hypertension, impulses will go to the cardiovascular regulatory center and ultimately the blood pressure will be brought down. So the change is there in the opposite direction. So what is the correct answer? The correct answer is option C, correction of blood pressure by the baroreceptors. Now we will go to the next question. What is question? A cell in a body which has reached its maximum size and then it decreases in size. This process is called as A, metaplasia, B, aplasia, hypoplasia, atrophy or apoptosis. Now this question is put so that you have an idea of what do you mean by metaplasia, aplasia, all these terms that should be clear. So what do you mean by metaplasia? It is a change in the form. A cuboidal cell is becoming a squamous cell. So that is metaplasia. What is aplasia? Genesis is not there. It has not been formed, congenital one. So that is aplasia. Hypoplasia, congenital defect, because of that the growth has not taken place of that cell. So that is hypoplasia. What is atrophy? Atrophy is the decrease in size. Once it has reached to the maximum size, it has decreased in size. And what is apoptosis? It is a programmed cell death. Death has occurred in that case. So the confusion will be there between option C and option D. The cell size has decreased in here also. But in hypoplasia, what has happened? The cell size has not reached to its maximum. It remains small. But when atrophy, what has happened? It has reached to its maximum and now it has again decreased. So option D remains the correct option. That is atrophy. Going to the next question. When there is a hypertrophy of the skeletal muscle, there is increase in number of muscle fibers, there is increase in number of myofibrils, there is increase in number of muscle fasciculus, there will be increase in number of intrafusal fibers, there will be increase in the mitotic capacity of the muscle cells. So what do you think is the correct answer? Did you get to the correct answer or still there is some confusion? Let's see. What happens in hypertrophy now? Hypertrophy means what? Remember, there is no increase in the number of muscle fiber cells. But what has increased is the myofibril, the protein content of the muscle, it has increased. So, more number of actin and myosin complexes. And because of that, the contraction strength of the muscle, it has increased. Okay. So, but what is the important thing you have to remember? There is no increase in the number of muscle fibers. There is increase in number of myofibrils. There is no increase in the number of muscle fasciculars, which are again bundles of muscle fibers. There is no increase in the number of intrafusal fibers, because these are the ones which are related with the stretch reflexes. And there is no increase in the mitotic capacity, because there is no increase in the number of muscle fibers. So what is the correct answer? The correct answer is option B. That is, there is increase in the number of myofibrils and uplift in the protein content. Next question. Sodium hydrogen pump present in the luminal membrane of the proximal tubule in the kidney is an example of facilitated diffusion, primary active transport, co-transport of form of secondary active transport, counter-transport of form of secondary active transport, and osmosis. So what do you think is the correct answer for this? For this you should have the knowledge of what are the various channels present on the luminal membrane of the proximal tubule. If you recall that knowledge, what you will find on the basolateral membrane, there is one sodium potassium ATPase pump. And this sodium potassium ATPase pump will ultimately drive or give the energy for this sodium potassium, that is the counter transport. Sodium is being absorbed, at the same time the hydrogen ion is being secreted. So this is the one which gets the indirect energy from the sodium potassium ATPase pump. So then what should be your answer? Yes, the answer is counter transport, a form of secondary active transport, right? So that should be your correct answer. Going to the next question. The equilibrium potential value for the sodium ion as calculated by the Nernst equation is. Now these are the equilibrium potentials value for the different ions, mainly the sodium ion, potassium ion, chloride ion, you should know. So what's your correct answer in this? So the correct answer will be plus 61 millivolt. Remember that if the sodium ion is given a chance, they will try to take up the membrane potential to plus 61 millivolt. Minus 94 millivolt is the equilibrium potential value for the potassium ion, whereas minus 70 millivolt is the equilibrium potential value for the chloride ion. Going to the next question. The period after the first stimulus, during which the second stimulus of the same strength cannot generate the action potential, is called as latent period, absolute refractive period, relative refractive period, chronic say, and the refractive period. Yes. Can you tell me what is the correct answer? For that you have to understand the properties of the action potential related to that. What do you mean by latent period? Latent period is the time from which the stimulus will take to appear. The point of stimulus, and after that the stimulus has to reach to the threshold level, and then again the action potential has to be generated. So that is the major cause of the latent period. What is chronic say? Chronic say is related to the Rio-based chronic say and the excitability. So these two options we are just ruling out. The confusion is there between the absolute refractive period, relative refractive period, and the refractive period. Now, for that, the definition of refractive period should be very clear. What is refractive period? It is the period after the first stimulus during which the second stimulus of the same strength is not able to generate action potential. And this refractive period can be again divided into absolute refractive period and the relative refractive period. The first part will be the absolute refractive period. What is the definition of absolute refractive period? It is the period after the first stimulus during which the second stimulus of any strength, maximum strength, even if it is used, it is not able to generate the action potential. The membrane is absolutely refractive. And what is the relative refractive period? If we use a stronger stimulus than the original stimulus, that is able to generate the action potential. So what should be the answer here then, correct answer? According to this definition, the answer should be yes. So You have got it correct. So that is the refractory period. Going to the next question again. Which of the following events occur before the action potential reaches T-tubule of the excitation contraction coupling of the skeletal muscle? Binding of myosin head with actin, release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, breaking down of ATP by myosin head, entry of calcium from the synaptic cleft into the presynaptic terminal, and pumping of calcium from the sarcomere into the sarcoplasmic reticulum by calcium magnesium ATPase pump. Now, what you have to analyze here? You have to analyze here the steps in the excitation contraction coupling of the skeletal muscle. So, if I just want to help you, what is the first step? Yes. So, action potential reaches that is the axon, that is the nerve muscle junction, and what happens there? Then there is a entry of the calcium ions. Voltage gated calcium ions will be open at the presynaptic terminal, and the calcium from the synaptic cleft or synaptic gutter will enter inside the presynaptic terminal, and because of that, what will happen now? Exocytosis of the acetylcholine vesicles, and the acetylcholine vesicles will generate the end plate potential, and that end plate potential, if it is strong enough, it will generate the action potential in the sarcolemma, and that action potential will go to the T-tubule, and that is our question, that when the action potential reaches, what is the before it has, what has happened? So the option D, that is entry of calcium from the synaptic cleft into the presynaptic terminal. So what are the next steps related to that now? Excitation contraction coupling. Then this ultimately, when it reaches to the T-tubule, it will cause release of calcium from the triad, and that is mainly the terminal cisternae. Calcium will bind to the troponin C. The active sites will be open, and what will be the power strokes, and with the walk along theory, the muscle will contract, right? So your correct answer here is option D. Next question. Which are one of the following statement about the action potential is not correct? During depolarization, there is influx of sodium ion. During repolarization, there is efflux of potassium ion. During plateau phase of action potential in cardiac muscle, there is efflux of potassium ion. During plateau phase of action potential in cardiac muscle, there is influx of calcium ion. During hyperpolarization, there is influx of potassium ion. Now, can you analyze all the 5 options and reach to the correct answer? For this, you have to analyze each and every option. As you can see, during depolarization, there is influx of sodium ions. So yes, it's true because of that. During repolarization, there is efflux of potassium ions. That is also true. During plateau phase of the action potential, there is efflux of potassium ions. Simultaneously, there is influx of the calcium ion. So therefore, there is no change in the membrane potential. Plateau is reached. So options C and D are also correct. So ultimately, what is left is during hyperpolarization, there is influx of potassium ions. So why this is a wrong statement? Because during hyperpolarization, there is continuous efflux of potassium ions. Remember, potassium channels are lazy. They are late to open and late to close. So therefore, there is continuous. So what is the correct answer? The correct answer is option E. During hyperpolarization, there is influx of the potassium ion. Then, question. Secretin causes enzyme-rich secretion by pancreas, bicarbonate-rich secretion by pancreas, HCl secretion by the stomach, increased bile salt secretion in bile, causes contraction and expulsion of bile from the gallbladder. Now, for this, just try to analyze and reach to the correct answer. For this, you should have the knowledge of the secretin. So, what is the secretin? What is the major stimuli for release of secretin? The major stimuli for release of secretin is the acidic chyme. When the acidic chyme reaches the duodenum and the upper small intestine, the secretin will be released by the upper small intestine. And then, if acidic chyme is the main stimulus, so what the secretin will try to do? Secretin will try to do cause the bicarbonate-rich secretion. Either it can be from the liver or pancreas. So here the answer is option B, bicarbonate-rich secretion from the pancreas, so that the acidic chyme can be neutralized. Right? So the correct answer is option B. Going to the next question. Micelles formation is necessary for the intestinal absorption of. Now remember, the micelles formation, which is very important, which is done by the bile salts. What are the options? A. Glycerol, vitamin B12, vitamin D, bile acids and sodium. Now, what is the function of bile salts? To cause absorption of the fat and digestion and absorption of the fat. So how we can relate it to this question now? So if you look at all the 5 options, you will find a fat soluble vitamin, which is that vitamin D. So for ADEK, absorption of ADEK, what is required is the micelles formation that is required. So which is the correct answer here? Option C. Going to the next question. Pancreatic enzymes are activated in small intestine by chymotrypsin, enterokinase, cholecystokinin, carboxypolypeptidase, secretin. Now this is again of your knowledge that pancreatic enzymes, especially the protein digesting enzymes, they should not be activated within the pancreas itself. When they reach the intestine, one factor is among them which is going to cause the activation of them. Which is that factor? Yes. So the correct answer is enterokinase. So that is one which is going to cause the stimulation of that, and ultimately the trypsinogen will be converted into trypsin and remaining the chymotrypsinogen, and it will be converted into chymotrypsin, and that will cause the activation. Next question related to the body temperature regulation. Which among this is not a temperature losing mechanism in the body? Skin vasodilation, contraction of the piloerector muscles, sweating, panting and behavioral changes. Now look at the question here. Did you get the correct answer or is there any confusion? Yes, I would like to help you. Temperature losing mechanisms. Whenever the heat in the body, temperature increases, they are the temperature losing mechanisms they are activated by the hypothalamus. Which can be then? Look at skin vasodilation. Skin vasodilation will cause more heat to be lost to the atmosphere. So it is a temperature losing mechanism. Sweating, of course, you know that sweating is the one which is very helpful to lose the heat. Panting in animals, in the dogs, you can see that whenever there's panting because of the saliva from the tongue, it gets evaporated. At that time, the heat is lost from the body. Behavioral changes can cause you some confusion because the behavioral changes can mean both the ways. If you are feeling warm, hot, what you will do? You will switch on the fan, right? But if you are feeling cold, you will put on the blankets. So the behavioral changes can mean both the way. So don't go for that option. What the option remains is the contraction of piloerector muscles. Now actually the contraction of the piloerector muscle is the one which is not helpful to gain the heat in human beings, but this is much more helpful those in the animals which are having the hairs, such as the polar bear. So in that case, what will happen? Contraction of the piloerector muscle will raise the hairs and it will form within that hairs, what will be air is trapped in, and air is a bad conductor of heat. So ultimately what will happen because of that? The heat losing, that will be stopped. So ultimately what is a heat conserving mechanism? Contraction of the piloerector. The residual phenomena is seen in the human beings, because since we have got the less amount of the hairs and not the lengthy hairs in the all over the body, so this is not useful. But remember, contraction of the piloerector muscle, this is not a temperature losing mechanism. Next, going to the next question. Which among the following is main cause of fever? Excessive skeletal muscle activity, that is example shivering, which generates heat. Inflammation increases the body metabolism. Resetting of set point of temperature in hypothalamus. Toxins produced by foreign organism. Excessive generation of heat from the assimilation of the food. In these questions, you may try to get confused because the excessive muscle activity, of course, it will generate the heat and that will increase the body temperature. But what is question is asked is, which is the main cause of fever? So what basically, because the answer remains is that mainly the WBC during the inflammation, what it will happen? They will cause the release of interleukin 1. And interleukin 1 is an inflammatory mediator which is going to reset the set point of temperature in the hypothalamus. So once this is reset now, the body will think that it's not 37 degrees Celsius. So it will think that 38 or 39 degrees Celsius is the body temperature. So then secondary to that, there will be shivering and then you will gain fever, right? So the correct option, best option among this is option C, resetting of set point of temperature in the hypothalamus. Going to the next question. Which among the following lung volumes or capacities can be measured by spirometry? Functional residual capacity, physiological dead space, total lung capacity, vital capacity, and residual volume. So yes, which among this can be measured by spirometry? For this you have to again analyze that whatever the volume of the air which we cannot breathe out in spirometer, which we will not be able to measure. So whatever the volume of the air which we cannot be breathed out is the residual volume. So the residual volume which will not be measured by the spirometry. Next, when it comes to the residual volume, what is meant by functional residual capacity? It is the amount of air left in the lung after normal expiration. So it consists of the residual volume plus expiratory reserve volume. So naturally functional residual capacity will also not be measured by the spirometry. What is the physiological dead space? Again, this cannot be measured by the spirometry. Total lung capacity, since we cannot measure residual volume, so we will not be able to measure the total lung capacity. And then what is left is the vital capacity. According to the definition, what is vital capacity? The amount of air which can be expired forcefully after forceful inspiration. So that is the one which we can put into the spirometer and which will be able to measure. Next question. Which among the following does not cause a shift of oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve to right? Now, what you see in this now? Option A, exercise, decrease pH of the blood, then fetal hemoglobin, increase in the CO2, increase in tissue temperature. Whenever the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve shifts to right, what is the meaning of that? It is going to cause more release of oxygen. For the same partial pressure, the more oxygen that will be released, less percentage of saturation will be bound to the percentage of saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen that will decrease. In exercise, we require more oxygen. So that is again going to shift the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve to right. Then we also require more, whenever the person is doing exercise, what will happen? There will be decreased pH of the blood. That will, the blood will become acidic or tissues even. Increase in carbon dioxide content. If the tissue is doing exercise, the carbon dioxide level will increase. There will be increase in temperature also. Fetal hemoglobin in turn will have to take oxygen from the placenta. In that case, it should have more affinity. And in that case, the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve will shift to left instead of right. So which is the correct answer here? The fetal hemoglobin. Going to the next question. Which among the following is muscle of tidal expiration? Abdominal recti muscle, internal intercostal, scalene muscle, all of the above or none of the above? Now here, this question has been deliberately put because of you should recall your knowledge of the tidal inspiration as well as tidal expiration. So what is the cause of tidal expiration? Can you recall? Yes, it is because of the elastic recoil. So generally no muscle is used in that. It is just the elastic recoil. So what should be your correct answer? None of the above. Going to the next question. What is the importance of the upper or the flat part of the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve? It is important to maintain constant CO2 level of the blood. It is important at the tissue level to cause enough release of O2 according to the tissue need. It is important at the alveolar level to cause complete excretion of CO2. It is important at alveolar level to ensure that even if the alveolar PO2 decreases to 60 mm of Hg, the Hb is almost totally saturated. It is important because it is responsible for the Bose effect. Now what you see in the flat part? The flat part is mainly indicating that the Hb remains, the percentage saturation remains almost constant in the upper part, even if the partial pressure of oxygen decreases. So naturally, if you analyze this, What is the importance of that? Yes, which option among this can be correct? Yes, the option D, which will show that it is important at the lung level or the alveolar level, where even if the partial pressure has decreased, again it is going to be making sure that the percentage O2 saturation that remains almost normal. Going to the next question. Which among the following group of neurons are responsible for the forceful respiration? Ventral respiratory group of neurons, dorsal respiratory group of neurons, apneustic center, pneumotaxic center, and nucleus of tractus solitarius. For this, to get to the answer, yes, did you get the correct answer? So for that, you can just remember about the functions of different group of neurons. So dorsal respiratory group of neurons, they will mainly regulate the tidal respiration, whereas apneustic center will mean regulating mainly the rate of respiration, mainly the depth of respiration and the rate of respiration. Same thing is with the pneumotaxic center. Nucleus of tractus solitarius will act as a sensory input center, and what remains is the ventral respiratory group of neurons. These are the ones which are going to cause the forceful inspiration as well as the forceful expiration. So that is the correct answer. Next question. The amount of air which a person can expire forcefully after forceful inspiration is total lung capacity, functional residual capacity, vital capacity, inspiratory capacity, expiratory capacity. Can you get to the answer? So for this, you should have the definition of all the volumes and the capacity. That should be clear. So what is that? The amount of air which the person can expire forcefully after forceful inspiration. The person has inspired forcefully. So that means it indicates the inspiratory capacity also. Now the person is expiring forcefully. So whatever the air it has expired, it will indicate, it will have expiratory reserve volume, tidal volume as well as the inspiratory capacity. So the summation of these three together is called as, yes. So what should be your correct answer here? The correct answer is vital capacity, right? So with this we come to the end of this session. Thank you.